I feel communication always doesn't need to be verbal, in the sense that it doesn't always need to be have the advocacy angle of, I'm going to go and fight for my right, because sometimes that's very exhausting, specifically for people most impacted by that problem. It can create this level of hopelessness. But when you use the arts and use communication and use design, it brings that hopeful quality back into that, okay, maybe we'll do something.
Welcome to Shaping Cities. In this podcast brought to you by City Collab, we spotlight the practice of communication in city planning and development and its vital role in bridging ideas with action. In today's episode, we'll delve into the use of arts as a communication tool, unlocking its potential to build trust, foster empathy, and bring underrepresented voices to the forefront. I'm very happy to welcome Natasha Sharma as our guest for this conversation. Natasha is an arts based practitioner whose work is deeply intertwined with urban practice. Through her artistic civic engagements, she creates spaces that nurture community belonging and agency. In her current role with the Community Design Agency, Natasha collaborates closely with low income communities in Govandi, Mumbai to design, develop, and enhance their built environments while celebrating the vibrant arts and culture that flourish in these neighborhoods. Welcome, Natasha. Very happy to have you today. So, Natasha, let's start with what is your understanding of an arts-based, urban practice? What does it mean to you, and what is your perspective on its role in, shaping urban spaces?
I mean, there's no one definition to this. Uh, what I've realized is that if you look at arts as a tool, generally, even outside of urban practice, it's a tool for expression, for communication, for sharing one person's perception of something. And if you look at urban practice, it's a kind of mix between people, place, and policy, right? What I see missing in this sort of a structure is primarily expression. And what arts does is that it brings that, public powered expression, visualization, collectivization, and co creation that is missing in the urban development practices in these days. And arts has always also historically been a medium to question the system. So here the system is urban development, and there are people who are using this tool. Where I work, that's also a place where we're using this tool, is to question the system, but in soft power, through visualizing again what the possibility of something could look like, and also saying that this is how we think we should live, or we think we should be developing our city. So it's that voice. And it might seem like the intangible, but I think that's the power of arts, to make the intangible tangible. And I think that's where, like, the crux lies. Yeah.
What inspired you, to take this route of using arts design as a way, to build community participation, to bring these voices to the forefront and use it as a tool, really to, a tool of expression in urban development?
It actually started very much with my own personal experience of growing up in Mumbai city. Because of the way our finances were, as when I was a child with my sister and my parents, we would often shift our houses every 2 to 3 years based on how much we are making that year. And sometimes be in like a two-bedroom hall kitchen, and then sometimes it'll be a one-bedroom hall kitchen. And it'll be a totally different locality. So what I started to realize is that space is not just a place that you live, but it's also a reality that like, it's a place where all the socio-economic and cultural realities of the city are manifested. My access to play or playground or park, all of that was changing every 2 to 3 years, because that's how much I could afford it. So it just felt like I have to inherit these qualities, which should be allowed for every child across socioeconomic situation, right? And I'm just saying that like this is just this is just you walking from one neighborhood to another. This is just you playing around in that space. So I was really just embodying this experience कि ये क्या चल रहा है, what's happening here, like why am I feeling this. And then I think these questions are very subconscious. I won't say I was thinking about it so critically back then. I was just experiencing it. And when I started decided to do, like, I'm going to do arts and design in my graduation, I was also put in this project called Art in Transit. This was my last year in Srishti Institute of Art, Design and Technology, where we were told that now your classrooms are your metro stations that are coming up in the Bangalore city. Now, as a concept, I think it's a great thing that you're getting out of the school and you're actually now becoming these active practitioners in your city before you're actually even a practitioner. You've not even like graduated. And now the whole canvas was with us, and we were collaborating with BMRCL. So it's an education institute collaborating with BMRCL. And here are the students and the citizens trying to make something together. I really enjoyed that model of like three stakeholders talking and creating something within a public sphere. Now, what my question then was, because again, there's a timeline, it's 4 5 months of producing a thesis, etc. We were like, now go research and make some intervention there, or do some art there. And then I remember just questioning myself as to who am I to suddenly go and do some art there. Like, what gives me the agency to be like, I am now an artist or a designer and I'm going to go make something nice. And I think that's when I took a few steps back. And I was like, I want to actually question the publicness of public spaces more than become the artist in public spaces.
You've grown up in Mumbai, I think, and you were born there, and definitely it has played a part in uh, through early experiences, how you kind of experience the city. After Shrishti also decided to come back to Mumbai.
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
inspired you to come back to Mumbai? So I think, is there something also about the city that inspires you, that, this is the city I want to live, I want to give back to, through art and design?
I mean, I don't think that I'm mostly ever inspired to come back to Mumbai as a city. In terms of the rapid development that's happening here, it's actually not the best city in terms of quality of life, in terms of rental. So there are a lot of issues in the city, but I've also noticed that it's also very like the people here somehow get through with it, right? Like there is this sort of, I mean, I hate to use this word, but there's this resilience, which is again, of course, taken for granted. Whatever happens in Bombay, people are going to continue working. So I kind of feel like this rut that they're in doesn't quite inspire me, but it's also the reality of what it is. Now, in that reality, when I joined community design agency 7 years ago, at that time I was like, okay, maybe we can activate the public spaces of this neighborhood, Govandi, and see what are the things that we can do together. So it was also very like me coming out of my practice, having practiced for a couple of years in public spaces and wondering, oh, if I come here, probably what I have learned here could work here. And that's where, and what inspired me was the fact that here the problem was much larger than just a public space problem in an urban development sector. It was really how the spaces were intertwined with how they were moved from different parts of the slums into this resettlement colony, how they were seen as second class, third class citizens. Hence, you were able to move them in places and design their spaces in a way that is entirely inhumane. So, and you're not considering that you're moving communities and people and family, but you're considering that you're just moving 25,000 number of people from different parts of the city in order to make more bridges or widen more roads. So for me it was this thinking and its direct impact, a direct impact in people's lives. And when I say direct, I mean it is impacting their livelihoods, it's impacting their education opportunities, it's impacting their identity. And it is one community that's, I mean, I say community, I don't like, there are several communities within that one community, but it's still a community that's come from the slums, who made houses there, worked for the city, continue to work for the city. They are the labor class of the city. How is the city looking after them, was the questions. And I think that is what inspired me to continue working in Mumbai. That question, that spirit, and joining this larger movement that the people themselves were creating in Govandi, of saying that we deserve better quality of life.
There's a lot more to these communities, rather than just seeing them as resettlement colonies. There are people who are enterprising, resilient, they're trying to make a difference, they're contributing. So it'll be great if you can speak a little bit about Govandi. What is it as a place, some of the people that you have encountered, and also community design agency and its role in driving this transformation in that place.
So when I started working with the people of the resettlement colony Natwar Parik lies in the M East ward of Mumbai, and Govandi is part of that. It's often notorious. It's known as like the blacklisted and full of NGOs wala community, because everyone wants to go there, and that's where all the problems lie. And like, there's nothing one can do about it. वो तो ऐसे ही रहने वाला है. So that's the perception that the city has. Most of the time, when you say Govandi, Mumbai people don't know where Govandi is. They often think of Bhiwandi, because it just rhymes with it. So it's not just neglected by BMC; it's also neglected by its people. And so I remember, like, when I'm spending my time there, we are trying to work on physical infrastructure where, like, public space nahi hai. There are 25,000 people living in 61 buildings. Each building have like 96 flats. Each apartment has, on an average, 5 to 7 people. So each, building will have around 500 people, and they are sharing a long alleyway between these buildings, which are just like almost like 4 meters wide and really, really lengthy. And all of that is usually filled by garbage. And so that the little open space they have is fully filled by garbage. And then they have to go back to their 226 square foot apartments, which are not very well ventilated or lit because the buildings are so close to each other. So one of the things I remember, Parveen ji, who's a community leader and also part of our team, she keeps saying that, they were so happy that they got a toilet because that was the main issue when they were in the slums. But they didn't realize that in exchange of toilets, they were giving up so much of what they didn't see value in when they were in the slums, which means just being under the sun, which means having constant movement of air, which means having kids just running around in places and not having that space. So they realized value of certain things much later. So, toilets great, and we will like worship it, and that's how she says it, that it's the part of our house that we keep the most clean. But then rest everything doesn't make sense to them. So I think it was in these conversations and spending these many years also in the community that we felt that maybe creative expression is actually at the heart of Govandi, because there are rappers and photographers and dancers and people who like have things to say about Govandi. That's what they would keep sharing when we were like trying to address a physical infrastructure issue. So for example, when we're looking at like safe and unsafe spaces, or where we can put better lighting, or where we can make a space vibrant, the reasons for this was safety, was identity, and was how they wanted to come together and do something. It was really that they were like, ye to ho jayega, like ye to ban jayega, like it's not so difficult to do a mural and activate a space. But why do you think I have to do the mural? What is the connection I have to that space? And I think that is what came to surface, and we were like, if that's what's coming to surface, then again the space is just a manifestation of it. Let's highlight the undercurrents through our work. Yeah.
So I think it's very insightful, fascinating. So I think what I hear you say is that when you started working in this community, you realized that I think creative expression could be that tool which could bring the community together, unite it. So I think help us unpack and understand. The community has challenges of physical infrastructure
Yeah.
largely. So
Yeah.
there's a waste issue, which is is the most pressing issue. There's light, ventilation. You don't have spaces, and right here is community design agency going into this in this community, first listening that what are the challenges, and then trying to find answers and tools to improve this built environment. Give us an example, for example, whether it's the waste management issue or carving out public spaces. How important did art and art based communication practices become? How did it become a tool to trigger, these changes in the physical environment?
So, for example, if I give you the example of the first mural we did, Hakse Govandi, it was the only spot that both boys and girls marked as a unsafe spot within the neighborhood. Otherwise, all spots were opposite. You know, the girls marked as safe, the boys marked as girls marked as unsafe, the boys marked as safe. It was the first time they also communicated through this. When we did that mural, it's just a 10-foot by 10-foot wall. We sat together and we thought about a lot of things about why we want to do this mural and what do we want to write on it. And that's where Hakse Govandi came from. So Hakse Govandi is actually a title of a rap written by Moeen. He's now, I think, 24. Back 24 years ago, when he was 20, he was a Swiggy worker while also a rap artist. And he had already produced this rap. And, you know, when we asked him that why did you produce it, he said, because I don't want our narrative to be linked to crime and garbage. And then we said that, okay, would you want us to then write Hakse Govandi on the wall? And he was like, yeah, I mean, I would love an artwork of this because I want to show how proud we are. So the point is that here we are trying to make a spot safe. But what people are connecting with it is pride. And because there was pride in it, there were so many people who came to paint that mural. So we just had to literally outline the mural, and the painting was done by kids, by women, by senior citizens who still come back and say that this is the spot that we have painted and that is the spot that we have created, and that mural for 4 years has stayed intact. Now that says something about a space, right? Because usually when most walls have like pan stains and posters and constantly are taken over and undervalued, why is Hakse Govandi untouched? Why is everyone feeling that sense? And then after that thing that we did, while we were painting it, kids started bringing speakers and started dancing around the wall. We had a lot of like dancing, rappers also coming. I remember a lot of people just sitting around, and it just felt like a mini festival on a wall, like, you know, over a wall, like. So if you see that, I remember Parviji, and she has a very very nice way of putting things. So I will keep bringing her up in her own voice, where she says that, यू नो आर्ट तो बेजान दीवार को भी जान दे देता है, तो इंसानों को तो दे ही देगा. And when she said that after the wall, it really moved me as a practitioner, because it is in that articulation that I found home as well. I was like, exactly, that's what we're trying to do. One mural happened, that space got cleaned up and activated. They were like, when's the second mural happening? No one's asking about the garbage streets anymore. Where are we activating? No one's seeing garbage as an issue. They're like, forget the issue. Let's do something that will just make us feel better about our neighborhood. And, you know, that's when the conversations that we were like, we are now thinking to solve a problem, but what the community wants is to just visualize a possibility. And those communication notes became part of our presentations that we could take to BMC, and BMC like, oh my god, this is something we see in Bandra. How is it happening in Govandi? You know, that status quo of what you would see in places with access and not in access, and then suddenly you're like, oh, this is accessible. And we're like, yes, and it's very much within budget. It doesn't take a lot of money to activate space, but you've taken a lot of money to redevelop and, you know, take away belonging. So we're trying to constantly negotiate in that, and I think that was a winning point for us.
You also mentioned, Natasha, that you and CDA, you also became a bridge between the community and the municipal corporation to, to amplify some of their issues, to bring out their concerns, needs, negotiate with BMC for space, for services. And that's also a communication, design function, right? So there you're using your skills and your understanding of that issue, but more importantly the trust that you've built with the community as and acting as a bridge. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, how important it is, to become that voice?
Specifically, people who are moved from slums to resettlement homes, they are very well connected to these authorities, because they have for 14 years gone to them saying, हमें घर चाहिए. They are the ones who know who's the commissioner they have to go to, where they have to stand in line, where they have to, get permissions and NOC. They are very, very well aware, and they have those connections. Except that's what's taken for granted, that these people will keep coming again and again to ask for the same thing, and hence it doesn't happen. And your government officials shift, your elections changes, but the conversation and the fight is for the same thing. When CDA came in, we became these supporting agencies, where the community was like, आप लोग इनको कहाँ से ले आए आपकी मदद करने के लिए. The question was really like, आप क्यों जुड़ गए. They were also like what is it for you that you have joined in. And we would have to say this, that it's actually just the common purpose that we feel that everyone should have a better quality of life and should have spaces that are equal. And we want to create that. So those were the first time we had to advocate for ourselves also, that we actually make sense here. But then they're like, oh, then you can bring funding in, you can bring a lot of resources in, where do we need, where do you need us. And we said, we can only show you where we need funding, but you are the ones who can bring city level funding to fix things. So our presentation usually involved the things that the community have done already, in order to prove to them that they can maintain if you do something better. Because their questions always maintenance. How is it that even if we make the pathways better, they're going to throw garbage? So it's always a they problem. For authorities, it's always a resident problem. For the residents, always the authority problem. So our thing was to map that out, that whose problem is it really. So, and I feel communication always doesn't need to be verbal, in the sense that it doesn't always need to be have the advocacy angle of, I'm going to go and fight for my right, because sometimes that's very exhausting, specifically for people most impacted by that problem. That you're impacted by the problem and you're also fighting for it and you're getting no solution. It can create this level of hopelessness. But when you use the arts and use communication and use design, it brings that hopeful quality back into that. Okay, maybe we'll do something. So Govandi Arts Festival, for example, for me was a way of like looking at it as a tool of communication. It's a tool of telling the residents of Mumbai and BMC in the tools of the youth there and the stories that they want to say through creative mediums in their public spaces, which are usually encroached by garbage and parking, and saying that this is how we have taken the exact same space. We've done a festival, and now the festival's done, the first edition. And I remember, like, they mentioned this thing, the community, on the last day of our festival, that ये दुल्हन जो हमको फेस्टिवल ने दी है, ये हम उसको वापस पार्किंग को नहीं दे सकते. So they felt like there's a new kind of a bride that's now come, which is a form of a public space that we cannot give back to parking. So immediately in a week's time, the community themselves mobilized, worked with the MLA, and put metal rods so that cars can't enter. And they reclaimed that open ground through the festival. And in that festival, the BMC, MMRDA, the local police, Shivaji Nagar police station, the CDA practitioners, all of us, the community were all on one stage. And I think that is what communication in a way did. That's what creative expression more than anything in a way did.
Thank you, Natasha. I think what you shared about arts and creative expression as a source of hope and an empowering tool for communication is so important, right? As you mentioned, the residents are already living in challenging circumstances. They're neglected, they're unheard, and then fighting for their rights in this kind of an environment can be really exhausting. And then art becomes the medium which brings hope and opens up possibilities for change. So the parking problem, for example, had persisted for years, and residents barely paid attention to it. But through the arts festival, they were able to reclaim it, and now they're determined to not let it slip away, right?
I remember there was a reporter that came few days before the festival to cover the festival, and he was given this, like, his from his main editor, this job. And he came and he started talking to us while all the mentorship programs were going on, and the youth were like ready to show their work. And he came to me and he said that for the last 5 years, I've only come to Govandi to cover crime stories. It's the first time I've come to cover art stories. And it was like a moment where I none of us knew how to respond to that, right? Because he's someone who communicates stories of Govandi on a daily. And he said that I have never come here before to actually just talk to the youth about what they're doing, what they're expressing, and why. So I think that was a very powerful thing for us also to hear, because we also started seeing like these were not our goals. Okay, this was not a laid out master plan. I've always been against those laid out master plans, the strategic planning and all of those things, because I know that those are essential, but I also know that sometimes when things are community driven, a lot of those things get suspended and a lot of organic things come to be, and you need to just be at a place where you're able to do improv.
So, Natasha, thank you. And we are nearing the end of this conversation. It has been truly inspiring and amazing to learn about your work on the ground. So, my final question, you began your journey as an artist and gradually found your place in urban practice, and now with over 8 years of experience in urban development space, you've likely gained valuable insights into architecture planning practices and current approaches. So drawing from your experience as an arts based practitioner and your close engagement with communities, what are the key lessons and insights would you share to help improve urban practice?
One of the key insight would be to cross pollinate, to really work and get inspired by fields outside you and see how you can bring learnings of that into this practice. So for example, a lot of my inspirations are never from urban practice or from architects. It's always from like different practitioners, probably writers, researchers who've tried a thing out in their field, and I'm like, okay, how does it make sense here? So we cross pollinate, use different disciplines to inspire you, and also do not work in silos as practitioners. I've seen this, that there will be a very specifically in architectural field, a very one person vision approach to things, and then the studio itself becomes part of that vision. I feel to break that as a practice, and I think that comes from how you include the not just the idea but the practice of care, because everyone is trying to care and create a space that's better for one another. Then how is the vision just one? So co-creation, collaboration, and care, like I think, are the crux of the insights that I would like to share about this. And I just feel like currently the world is not in a great place. It's very much polarized, and it's more and more in smaller communities and largely in global politics also. So I feel like as people, we need to just get more sensitive, and we need to see ourselves as community, and not again see ourselves through our what do you say, barriers and boundaries that are systemically created. Like I think we need to just really look at allyship more actively. We need to uh, really think of ourselves part of a larger system instead of ourselves as the only system. And I feel like I want to speak of it largely because it comes from the similar values of collaboration, care, and co-creation. So, and I'm also very happy that I can talk to practitioners like you, who are through architecture you've also moved through communications, and that the combination of that, again, cross pollination, really brings out a different output, right? So this is a great example as well of how we as practitioners should evolve and figure out why we're doing what we're doing and where it plugs in the most. So
Thank you, Natasha. It has been such a joy to listen to you. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Drop us a comment if you enjoyed today's episode. Our goal is to showcase different approaches to communication and highlight how essential it is to urban practice and creating lasting change. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, Shaping Cities. Thank you.